was one of the trucks which was going past the Mubarakpur bypass in Bhopal. That's where we were living during the COVID pandemic and the lockdown. And this is how they were packed inside trucks and going to Uttar Pradesh. And mostly the trucks were coming from Gujarat, Surat, Ahmedabad, Bombay. And these were the lucky ones, they didn't have to walk. Some were in covered trucks like this, they are, like you can see in the upper photograph, and the others were in open trucks sometimes they could cover themselves, and mostly only standing room. And all these boys were from the Surat textile mills and heading to Uttar Pradesh. So among these, their trucks went past Bhopal and via Shivpuri, Gwalior, and made their way towards Uttar Pradesh. So among these, there was a story of two young boys, two young men who were friends from the village. Both had migrated and were working in Surat. And when the lockdown happened, they, with great difficulty, got some money, got into a truck and were headed home. This was May when the temperatures were 45 plus. The bottom picture, a rare day when it was sort of overcast, but otherwise the sun was really, and even with this, it was very oppressive and hot. And one of the boys developed fever and started vomiting. And immediately the rest of the men in the truck got scared that he had got COVID and they wanted him to be removed from the truck. So by the time the truck had reached Shivpuri district, and they dropped him outside a community health center, and then his friend also got down because he said, I cannot leave my friend alone. And they were seen by the medical officer there, by which time the boy was unconscious, and he was shifted to the district hospital, where they diagnosed what he actually had was not COVID, but was a heat stroke. But by that time, they tried to hydrate him. He had acute renal shutdown and he died. So this was, and the boy remained behind. But even so, they isolated the boy, they put him in quarantine, they isolated the dead body for a week, and then he could take his friend's body home and give it to the family for the final rites. So I just want you to keep this in mind while we have today's session. And the whole question was, why did this boy die? So we are looking at how we engage with rights as a health professional. So if we look at the right to health, all of us, whether we are doctors, paramedical workers, other workers related to working in health. So the right to health is, the entire system is based on our right to health and to allow people to realize their rights to health. And health is a necessary condition of social life. And everyone is entitled to the basic provisions of health, and governments are obligated to provide basic health care. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights also has the right to health as one of the rights. So in our constitution, it did not expressly recognize the right to health as a fundamental right under Part 3, under fundamental rights. But because right to health is a part of life, and therefore it's a fundamental right guaranteed to every citizen under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. So this was read as part of our right to life, and therefore it's a fundamental right of every citizen in the country to have a right to health. I want to step back a bit and look at some of what our Constitution says. What does our preamble say? What are the fundamental rights that are guaranteed, and a little bit of what the directive principles are. Fundamental rights can be enforced in a court of law. Directive principles can't be, but they are sort of guidelines which the state should take into account when they formulate their various laws. Arvindan, could I ask you to please read out the preamble?
Sure, yeah. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic, and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves this constitution.
So it's going to be about 75 years next year by the time that we adopted this constitution. I want to look at a little more in detail and understand that we understand what all these words mean: sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic, republic, and the rest of it. So sovereign refers to an independent, autonomous country. Socialist is a system that advocates that the ownership and control of the means of production and distribution, the land, assets are all owned by the community as a whole. A secular, different definitions of it. One of it is that a view that matters of public policy should be conducted without the introduction of a religious element, or that there should be the state governance should be kept separate from religion. Democratic is a government where the power is vested in the people and exercised by them through a system of representation, usually involving periodically held free elections. And a republic is where a government where the state is ruled by representatives of the citizen body. So many countries, including India, now are what are referred to as a democratic republic. Justice, what do we mean by it? We mean the establishment or determination of rights according to the rule of law or equity. Liberty is the quality or state of being free or having the power of choice. Equality, the right of different groups of people to have a similar social position and receive the same treatment. And fraternity is a group of people associated or formally organized for a common purpose, or a brotherhood or sisterhood. So we have certain fundamental rights. Articles 14 to 35 refer to our fundamental rights. And these are the right to equality, which includes equality before the law, no discrimination on the basis of religion or caste or where we are, our race, sex, equal opportunities for employment, etc. The right to freedom, which includes Article 19, which is the right to freedom of speech, freedom of peaceful assembly, right to association, right to move anywhere in the country, right to pursue our trade or any trade or occupation anywhere in the country. It also includes Article 21, which is the right to life and personal liberty. So apart from the right to equality and right to freedom, the other fundamental rights are associated with the right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, and cultural and educational rights, as well as the right to seek constitutional remedies. So these are under various listed under different articles between 14 to 35, which are the fundamental rights. And this is in the chapter 3 of the Constitution. And the directive principles of state policy are that the provisions contained are not enforceable by any court, but the principles therein laid down are nevertheless fundamental in the governance of the country, and it shall be the duty of the state to apply these principles in making laws. But today, many of our fundamental rights are observed in the breach, and many of these denials of rights have a bearing on health of a person. So we will look at 4 case studies through which I hope to examine this. And then, so what do other rights have to do with the right to health? So the first case study I'll talk about is silicosis, the occupational hazard of doing God's work. These are all headlines in web portals, news portals, and articles. The second is I want to talk about the budget. The third case study is about the Achanakmar Biosphere Reserve and nature conservation. Oops, I'm sorry. And the fourth is about the Aadhaar card. So silicosis, many of you may already know, is a chronic disease which is incurable and is caused by the inhalation of silica dust in people who work in mines, who work with stone. And in Western Madhya Pradesh, it's known as Godra ki factory ki bimari. That is, people who go from Jhabua and all, a lot of the tribals migrate to Gujarat to work. And it means the illness that one gets in the factories of Godhra, which is basically silicosis. So the lungs are extensively damaged and the person is not able to get enough oxygen, and slowly the lungs get destroyed and the person dies. And depending on the extent of dust inhaled, the disease can strike within 2 to 3 years of work.
Can you share the presentation slides? We are unable to see.
Oh my gosh, you can't see that?
Now, just last 2 minutes.
1 minute. Sorry, I'm just going to stop sharing. It's not sharing now. No wonder. Okay. 1 sec. Did you see the headlines?
Yes, we saw that. Yeah.
Okay.
Until you mentioned and something switched.
Yeah, you can see this?
Yes.
Okay. So these are the case studies that we will look at. Okay, so this is a chest X-ray of a person who has silicosis and with extensive lung damage, and usually it's incurable, and the only way is to stop working in that kind of an environment. So this is a picture of a silicosis patient in Rajasthan who's been provided an oxygen concentrator at home, and he's now bedridden and needs an oxygen concentrator to be able to survive. So we have about 10 million workers in stone quarries and mines. This was a 2016 survey. There'll probably be many more now. And most of these are in the unorganized sector. In Rajasthan, in many of the districts, the workers who work with stone, they are the ones making the pillars and the various parts that go into making temples. And so nowadays, earlier this work was manual, but now they use power tools, and so the amount of dust generated, the granularity of the dust is much finer, and therefore it gets into the lungs much more easily, and the disease sets in much faster. So half of them have some degree of silicosis in any age group, and the lung damage is irreversible. And depending on the exposure to silica dust, severe disease may occur within 3 to 4 years. But in most states, establishing the diagnosis of silicosis is a long drawn-out process. It needs certification by a radiologist, a general physician. Some states want a pulmonologist to certify, but often in many of the districts, there is no specialist available. Or the specialists come on rotation once in a few months if there is a will to actually look for silicosis patients and provide them some compensation. Rajasthan probably has done the maximum work on this, and they have the best silicosis compensation and certification process, which is easier than in other states. Some states require that the worker be registered with the Building and Other Construction Works Board, BOCW board, and many workers are not aware of such a board or that they need to be registered in it. Usually when work is outsourced into small groups, done at home in the backyards, or it is done in big quarries where, like in Madhya Pradesh, many of the Saharia tribals are now stone quarry workers who have no idea where they should do, what they should do to be able to get any compensation, should they know that there's a compensation available. But very little attempt is made to either regulate the dust in the workplace or to provide personal protection to the workers. So most of it is on after the disease is done and the patient is dead, either give the family some compensation, or if the person has severe silicosis, then he is eligible for some compensation. We have new labor codes now, which there were a whole lot of labor laws which protected the rights of the workers related to their safety at work, related to their wages, related to their terms of employment and other things, social security. And these have been clubbed into 4 labor codes. These are the Code on Wages Act, Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, Industrial Relations Code, and the Social Security Code. So just a few of the gaps in some of these. I'm not planning to discuss the codes now, but the coverage in this occupational safety, health and working conditions, it's only extended if more than 50 laborers are working with a contractor, or if a factory is not using power, more than 40 laborers. So most small and informal businesses are then out of the purview of any of these laws. And factories with less than 500 workers need not comply with any safety measures. So this is part of the ease of doing business philosophy. And factories with fewer than 300 employees can lay them off anytime without permission. So this is just to give you a snapshot of some of the conditions on which laborers work. Whereas the directive principles of state policy, Article 39 says that the health and strength of the workers, men and women, and the tender age of children are not abused, and that citizens are not forced by economic necessity to enter avocations unsuited to their age or strength. And the other articles, 41 to 43, where there's a right to work and public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement, just and humane conditions, living wage, and participation of workers in management and industries. So the first thing we looked at was the labor laws we have and how it is how in a condition like silicosis, what rights and how it affects their health and where they can look to for recompense. The second budget, Arvindan, there are 3 messages. Anything to do with me? No. Okay. 10 million is more like it. Okay. Why bother about the budget, and do the numbers matter? Every year we know that in March, February, the budget comes out. There's a lot of speculation in the media about which sector is going to get what. Just to talk about the current budget. In 23-24, the health sector has been allocated 88,956 crores, which is an increase of 2.7% from last year. But if you look at the numbers, if you look at the picture which is behind these numbers, if you look at the health budget allocation, the government health expenditure as a percentage of GDP has come down. This was in 18-19, and this year it's even less. So as a proportion of our GDP, it's only 1.28%. So when we say the budget and when we make plans and we say that we want to achieve, health for all, or we want to achieve full immunization, we need to make sure we are putting enough money into the program so that we can achieve our targets. So when we look at the budget and we see, and our national health policy in 2017 has recommended at least 2.5% of the GDP should be spent on health. So there is far less than what we actually supposed to spend. And if you look at the health budget as a proportion of the union budget, it's steadily going down. So you can understand or think of what this would imply for various, whether it's health facilities, whether it is outreach healthcare, whether it's preventive healthcare, or even tertiary care in government institutions. At the moment, more than half the expenditure on health comes from a person's personal savings, loans, whatever. So it's out of this, what we call as out-of-pocket expenditure. This is not through the government. So with the government spending less than 2% of GDP, can we achieve our right to health? And what can we do about it? And without 3 to 5% being spent on health, it is difficult to provide the universal health care. If we look at the Women and Child Development and the department, their budget allocations and children's nutritional status, this is the department through which all the Anganwadis are run, where children under 6 are provided services. So the budgetary allocation has been steadily reducing for the Women and Child Development. It was 1% at best, and now it has come down to 0.6%. So the direct consequence of this, where we have poor infrastructure, we have poorly paid workers, we have irregular supplies. So when the government has its target for reducing malnutrition, the target was we'll just look at underweight children. The target was reduction of 2% per annum. That is, in 5 years, we should have reduced the prevalence of underweight children by 10%. But in the 4th National Family Health Survey, in 15-16, we had 35.8% of children underweight, which has reduced to 32%. So over 5 years, instead of reducing by 10%, we have only reduced less than 4%. So there are implications of how programs run – and directly related to how much budget is allocated to them. In the same budget this year, the defense budget is 5.94 lakh crores, which is 67 times the health budget. Article 47, the state shall regard the raising of the level of nutrition and standard of living of people and the improvement of public health as among its primary duties. But we are not putting our money where we say we want to be. The third case study that I want to talk is, is about nature conservation, which all of us agree is very necessary. It's a laudable effort. And tell you about the Achanakmar Tiger Reserve in Chhattisgarh. So the Achanakmar Sanctuary has been there for many years, but in 2009, it was declared as a tiger reserve under Project Tiger. And these are some of the hamlets which are there. Mostly we have Gonds, Begas, and a few Orans within the tiger reserve. Now, the tiger reserve implies zero human habitation. So all these villages, 35, are now scheduled for relocation. And 5 villages were relocated in 2011. And this is the new Bahaud village. So the person who was in charge was very sincere. There you have 2 neat parallel rows of concrete houses, well constructed. There are electricity poles and wires, switchboards inside the house. There are fans, there are bulb holders. The only small glitch is that there is no power to this whole area. So electricity has never been provided here. There were 3 people who I used to follow. There were 3 people I used to follow in the forest, and after they moved to Bahaud, I went to see them again. Naresh Bega, who was 10 years old at that time and had tuberculosis of the foot, and Joitram Bega, who had MDR TB of the lungs. And he was, of course, bedridden. And Tukur Bega, a person who was one of the community members, very vocal about not wanting to be displaced. So what had happened when they were moved is that the community was all given plots of land, not as a community, and each of them was given 5 acres. And they were promised agricultural, cultivable land, but then most of it was stony. And they had to spend a lot of money in getting the stones removed, hiring tractors to remove boulders, etc. Tukur Baiga got land which was on a slope, so he could not cultivate rice. And so he was really upset. Also, what happened was that the Anganwadi was dismantled, and the new village, it took a while for the Anganwadi to be set up and find a worker who was willing to come here. The ration shop continued to be within on the other side of the forest at Achanakmar. So they had to go now 30 kilometers to collect their rations. And it completely disrupted their lives. He was left at home with the granddaughter, and the son and wife were working elsewhere as daily wage laborers. And the son would try and buy 1 kilo of dal for him and make sure that there was some dal every day for this man. Now, 10 years later, Choitram Baiga died. Naresh Baiga, happily, he's recovered. He works as he works on the high tension power lines as a linesman. Tukur Baiga is still there, still very bitter. They still don't even have the patta to this land that has been given to them. What happens when, displacement because of a nature reserve or because of anything else happens? Is one, they were displaced. There was loss of access to forests and land. All the forest produce that they could access and supplement their diet or to get income, like mahua or sal leaves, other forest produce, they couldn't have. Their dietary diversity reduced back to rice and dal. Access to services was affected. There was no health center anywhere nearby. The PDS shop was very far away. Anganwadi was not there, and resulted in a worsened health and nutrition status. and often they're forced to migrate as wage labor to nearby towns and cities. So, Article 38, state shall endeavor to minimize the inequalities, not only among people, but among groups of people in different areas. So, the effect of a policy made with good intentions are really far-reaching, and that also affects people's health. So there was a report by Sama in 2019 about From the Margins to the Center, which studied the health inequities among tribal communities, which is very informative. This is just a short excerpt from one of the Constituent Assembly debates, a person called Jaipal Singh, who said, I rise to speak on behalf of millions of unknown hordes, yet very unimportant, of unrecognized warriors of freedom, the original people of India, who have variously been known as backward tribes, primitive tribes, criminal tribes, and everything else. If there's any group of Indian people that has been shabbily treated, it is my people. And we continue to treat them that way. The last case study that I'm going to talk about is about new laws that don't directly affect us, made every day. And why should we, as anyone working with connected to health, be concerned about it? So let's look at the Aadhaar card, which was brought in for better service delivery of welfare services. So people who were getting some service from the government at a subsidy were supposed to have an Aadhaar card. And I'm sure all of us who are listening here, with possibly an exception, do have Aadhaar cards. So the case was taken to court by people who opposed it, and this was the Supreme Court verdict, that it is necessary for those getting any government subsidy. But the court also emphasized the urgent need for data protection, for a data protection policy and plan, which we still don't have robust enough. And there's been lots of examples of data leakage where people's personal details are available on the net. Aadhaar was required to be linked with the PAN card, but it was not needed for phone connections. I'm getting an echo. Is it okay, Arvinda?
I'm able to hear properly.
Okay. It is not needed for phone connections. It's not needed for bank accounts. It's not needed for school admissions. Private entities cannot ask for Aadhaar, and Aadhaar information cannot be shared with anyone else. But many of our experience shows that we cannot do anything now without an Aadhaar card, whether it is to open a bank account or for a phone connection. Very often school admissions insist, though they're not supposed to. And so let's look at Aadhaar and ration cards and what the impact has been. Now, in August 2019, the government launched the One Nation, One Ration Card scheme. And it made it mandatory for individuals to link their Aadhaar card to the ration card in order to get benefits. So what they said is that it will eliminate duplicate ration cards and reduce the number of fraudulent ration card holders. So they kept extending the deadline. It was twice, but officials immediately started insisting that the Aadhaar has to be linked to the ration card. And for people who could not get it done, they started denying rations. And even for people, when it's linked, very often the ration cannot be given because the thumbprint is not authenticated, cannot be authenticated either for poor connectivity or for any other reason. So there was this news item, which I think many of you will remember, No Aadhaar, No Food. The family had been denied rations for months because they couldn't link their card with Aadhaar. So this study was done by CSDS in 2019, just before the elections, where it looked at ration card holding households, percentage of households that were denied ration or a benefit at some point due to Aadhaar related issues. So nationwide, we have 28%, nearly 30% denied at some point or the other because there were Aadhaar related issues. Rural and urban were about similar. In the Hindi heartland Bimaru states, it was double what was in the rest of India. This is not surprising because of connectivity issues may be more in the north than in the south. But the fact remains that almost a third of the population at some time or the other has been refused rations. So around 3 crore ration cards have been cancelled in the country because of insistence on Aadhaar linkage and biometric authentication. The government sees this as plugging leakages, but for many of our countrymen and women, the ration is the one thing that keeps them alive, and stopping it, saying that the Aadhaar is not linked, has a direct impact on whether they can survive or otherwise. Let's look at the Food Security Act also. So the right to food has also been included in the right to life, and therefore it is right to food is a fundamental right now. So though the Indian Constitution does not have an explicit provision regarding right to food, the fundamental right to life enshrined in Article 21 may be interpreted to include right to live with human dignity, which may include the right to food and other basic necessities. So we're actually denying them the right to life through refusing rations. This comes under Article 21. We also have a directive principle of right to work and public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement. Let's look at how Aadhaar has been impacting some of this. So the Rozgar Guarantee, as it's known in the north, or the National Rural Employment Guarantee, supposed to provide 100 days of work for any household that asks for it, of manual labor, 100 days through the year. There have been a lot of issues with it, and slowly over the last few years, every other budget allocated has been reduced. But in addition to that, there have been a couple of other developments as well. In February 1st of this year, 2023, the Ministry of Rural Development made it mandatory that all payments will be made through Aadhaar-based payment systems only. So already the budget has been cut, and this NMMS, Digital Attendance App, was made compulsory. Now, making Aadhaar-based compulsory payment, only 43% of workers are eligible for it today, and the rest of them cannot get any wages. So already more than half the people, if you insist that it has to be an Aadhaar-based payment system, half the workers and more will not get any wages for work they do. There is also an NREGA attendance app. So one was the Aadhaar-based payment system. The second one was an attendance app, which requires that this application requires 2 time-stamped geotagged photographs of the laborers. So when the laborers go to work in the morning, the supervisor has to take all the photographs and upload it, and the uploading window is restricted. And then again in the evening, he has to take the photographs and upload them. And often if there's no network, or by the time in the slow network, by the time he uploads, a few of the workers' photos may be uploaded and the others don't get. So we've had cases where people are working, but they're registered as, there's no record because there was no network. So even in places where the NREGA was working well, this attendance app has really been difficult for them. So though digital technology is good, may make things efficient, but it can, unless we think it through, and what the implications will be for people who may not have access to it, access to the connectivity, it has had terrible consequences. In Jharkhand, now it's mandatory Aadhaar for pension. So there was a survey which looked at reasons why pension had been refused to elderly people. 2% was that because they had died. 14% they had duplicate cards, so it was refused. But 84% of reasons why pension was withheld was because of failure of Aadhaar seeding. So one knows that when you're elderly, the fingerprints, the grooves and things, worlds get faded. It's difficult to validate Aadhaar. But making Aadhaar mandatory has resulted in many of the elderly, and it makes a difference between life and death. Many elderly, unfortunately, due to poverty or other reasons, are not very well cared for by their family members, and the 200 or 300 rupees they get gives them some amount of freedom, some amount of power to use the money as they want. Many people I have worked with, the elderly, have come and said that that allows them to buy their medicines. They say, I can ask my son to feed me, but at least for my BP medicines or some other medication, I can spend this money. The other big issue was for leprosy, where people didn't have fingers, or a blind leprosy woman with no fingers she couldn't validate it with her iris or with the fingers, and the pension has been blocked or any monthly rations have been blocked. So this has been another huge violation of their rights by insisting on Aadhaar linkage. So we've looked at 4 case studies. We've looked at the silicosis issue and the rights of workers. We've looked at the health budget. We've looked at the Achanak Maar and what a nature conservation can do to human beings. And we've looked at Aadhaar and bringing in a kind of policy and technology and the huge implications it has had on people's lives. So what is the way forward for us as health professionals? I would like to say that, pointed out by one of you, that the health budget, the defense budget is 6.7, not 67. I have to look at the numbers again. But the government budget includes state budget also, not only central government, but it also, when they say health, they talk about determinants of health. So some of the other water supply, all those also get often included. Some parts of it get included in the health. So it's not purely health, which is only spent on hospitals and primary healthcare centers. But Arvindan, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ramani. So can we take few questions if you have time for that?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Frederick. I worked for 7 years in Koraput district in Odisha.
Yeah.
So considering the health policy and the way the government is going, I'm only thinking of making higher institutions like AIIMS-like institutions in many places. And when you say the health budget, most of the money is actually focused into making AIIMS-like institutions across India. Now, we all know that how many people will really come to these institutions and how much is their coverage across India. My point is this minuscule amount enough for the public health in terms of preventive strategies and programs in most of these tribal regions? Because many of the funds have been dwindling over the years. Example, for HIV and other things, there is not much funds now even for really preventive aspects. So how do you see this financial year or the next going in these tribal pockets especially?
I think globally the money is very low. And 1 second. I want to show you something. Yeah. I'm just going to share one slide based for your question. Okay. This year's budget, this is how it is. 1 second. 1 minute. Can you see this? A pie chart?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is how the budget has been distributed this year. NHM is 69%, which includes all the programs. And then NACO is 6%. Pradhan Mantri Swasthya something Suraksha Yojana, which is basically the construction of infrastructure. Yeah. Then there is Ayushman Bharat infrastructure, which is the peripheral level, which is the health and wellness centers, which is what we need closer to the community. That is only 1% of budget. Family welfare 1%, biotechnology, and Ayushman Bharat, which is the health insurance, which a lot of it is in public-private partnership. There's a 14% budget. So this, where we needed money, there's a less allocation. And also in NHM, what the government has done the last year and this year is, it has stopped making specific line items. It calls it a flexi pool budget. And so there's no minimum guarantee that, you know, the program, this particular program will get this much or this will get this. Many of them are all mixed up now. So, yeah.
Thanks, ma'am.
No, of course, it's not enough. No. How, what the government will do, how it plans, it's a challenge, especially in, like you said, in remote and rural areas, and tribal areas, it's very difficult. Yes, Dr. Jagdish.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to your estimate of ICMR.
Yeah.
I think it is not 2016, but much more older.
Uh-huh.
And the recent one I have just seen is 12.5 million. But again, I don't know how far it is scientific. And because it states that most of the silicosis pensions are found in unorganized sector.
Yeah.
But we have record that the cases are also in organized sector also, at least in Gujarat, I know. So I think there is a great deal of need to work on estimates actually.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, mortality and morbidity of silicosis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Arvind, can I ask one question?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So this the budget, actually, the amount of money that is allocated is quite low for health. I mean, I think we've been talking about that for a long time. I was just wondering whether it's possible to put more pressure on the government by doing something else to increase the amount that is allocated. For instance, we could actually look at sub-centers and PHCs and then grade them based on some simple parameters like number of staff that are available, the quality of the infrastructure, and then put out data saying like, you know, so many percentage of sub-centers are in the A grade and so many are in the B grade and so on. I think that might help put more pressure to actually help improve the quality of the centers at the field level. So indirectly we'll ask for more funding, but rather than just say that the amount of money that's spent is 1 to 2%, we'll actually more specifically request for action on improving the grades of these sub-centers and PHCs. I think the government also has some program, but I'm not sure that that's actually a good way to go about doing it. So we should evolve some simple parameters and then get the community to actually participate and do a grading and publicize the results. Just a question and a suggestion.
Yes, I think it's a good suggestion to look at, you know, how good or badly the sub-centers are doing. There are two things. One is, until health becomes a public priority, the politicians are not going to listen. So I think a big role would be for getting people aware of, you know, the implications of this. So the easier option for people is they just don't go. They don't go to a government facility, they'll just go to a private facility. So I think a lot of education about the relative costs, what is the cost of care, the implications of so much of out-of-pocket spending, and at the same time also advocate with government about how it makes sense to increase public spending in health. And I think now is a good opportunity. There's so many states going to the polls. So talking to the MLAs and talking to people who are, you know, before they make their manifestos, to include it, or some maybe even a state specific issue would be good. So it would need advocacy and it would need public education. Apart from all this data collection that we would need it to buttress our arguments. There is a lot of literature already available on the kind of impoverishment due to healthcare seeking, and we need to, learn about it ourselves, to be aware of what is, to read more and see how damaging it is not to invest in public health.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Kannan, Dr.
Yeah.
Kannan. So, see, basically, in the public health, we need to digitalize the hospitals in a large way, not only in the villages, but even in the government setup. There is very poor digitalization. There are no computers, and it won't cost much money. And we need to form lots of guidelines which will make sure that we do everything perfectly rather than spending more money. If you look into the basic aspects of putting guidelines on everything, that is one way to improve. And considering the private hospitals, even though there is a very good policy on NABH and NABL, there are still lots of loopholes which has to be filled up. The problem is we devise very good structure for quality, but we lose on the feedback audit systems, so that it goes bad and bad over the period of time. Third thing, the people and the politicians are not aware that the people should get free education with compassion and rights. And even the people don't understand that it is the right to get the free health in the public hospitals, like in Western countries.
Yeah, certainly. I think oversight is a big issue, whether we, even if it is a public-private partnership, how do we control, how do we make sure that, treatment is rational, treatment is correct, what is the quality, and similarly, quality control in government institutions also. And like you said, audits, and yes, digitization to some extent. And unless the periphery is strengthened, the district hospitals are forever going to get, flooded with too many patients to see, and then they make a mess. So.
Yeah, so any other questions? Please go ahead and ask. So there is a question in the chat. Let me read out. Thank you, ma'am, for the eye-opening presentation. I'm Dr. Parth, first-year MD Community Medicine resident from MAMC, Delhi. What role do young professionals like me play in improving the status of health in India? Is there anything that I can do at my level, according to you?
Yes, and I've seen Prabhi's response as well. So, I think one is to read as widely as you can, and community health gives you, ideas and access and information about where you can access information. Read as widely as you can about various things that do affect health, and like I said, like today, I mean, it's not directly health. It is a lot of other policies and a lot of other things which are happening, which influence and affect the health of the people. So when the patient comes to you and, malnourished with something, you know that the disease is going to be more severe in them and they're going to take a longer time to recover. And why malnourished and where are they getting ration? And I think trying to understand more about not just the patient as somebody to be cured, but as a whole person and what else is happening in their lives. And at that, I think, would be one way of becoming more conscious and more thing. And also as a PG student, if you are interacting with medical students, to also look at how they can be sensitized to the wider issues around health and not just the germ theory kind of thing. Meera, thank you for your question. Meera has written issues that are systematically blind spotted, though obvious to us are what are your suggestions and what needs to be done and what would you prioritize? I think, Meera, there are just too many things and it's difficult to say what would you prioritize, but I think we as a medical fraternity need to read much more widely and also read the news and try and determine for ourselves which of the sites give us authentic information. There are a lot of web portals, there are some studies, and familiarize ourselves with all that is happening which influences health. So, and for example, this Achanak Mar thing, of course, there are some things maybe someone who's working in the periphery will get to know more easily than somebody else who's working in a larger town or a city. And obviously you wouldn't have gone to see Bahawad village. But like I said, the study done by Sama, somebody has asked for the link, I'll send it, I'll share it. But yeah, informing ourselves, I think, is the first step to being more aware. And that, yes, individuals matter. The fact that the person did not get their old age pension because their fingerprint has worn off, or the fact that the head of the family household has died and their name is knocked off the ration card and now they're not making new ration cards, so the rest of the family is not getting ration. We are not updating ration cards because we haven't done a census. So all that has implications to the hunger levels, to the morbidity levels, and that are happening all around us. We have, which came in the papers in Bangalore, a woman from Tamil Nadu, pregnant woman, who a migrant laborer, came to Karnataka, went to hospital for her delivery, was refused admission because she had no Aadhaar card and she didn't have what is called a Thai card from Karnataka. She went home to her slum and then delivered in the night twins, bled to death. The twins died, the mother died. So there was a big outcry against this. And then the doctors were told, don't turn away people. But this was told verbally. There are no written instructions. Even now in urban Bangalore, many of the migrants deliver at home because they don't have ID. And they don't have an ID from here. And so there are issues. Arvinder, could you read out the messages? There's several.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So Dr. Velayudham has, it's not a question, I think it's a suggestion. So he says, I quote, individual tragedies due to healthcare inequity touches emotionally. Statistics generally only affect us intellectually. Perhaps one way to bring changes in health equity is to have mechanisms whereby individual stories and tragedies due to inability to access needed healthcare can be brought to the national awareness systematically.
Yeah, I think that is one thing. After, like I said, first is for each of us to read extensively and be more aware. And the second thing which I think all of us can do and should do is to write and to share information. It may be a patient who comes to you in the clinic in MAMC, but when you interact with that patient, when you find out the other things that are happening, you may find some who have really have problems which you want to talk about and to share and to inform. That is one way. The other is also if you have a group of friends, either remotely located or in the same place, and maybe you meet once a month and discuss issues that have come that have disturbed you, or you're looking for answers, and help each other out. So mini networks do help in keeping up also our determination and our courage to fight this.
So Shruti has a question. Hello, ma'am, I have a doubt. And according to Indian public health standards, some guidelines are issued, I think, to states for health facilities after a very long time. Other than implementation of wellness centers, I could not find other progress in rural Tamil Nadu. Are those guidelines mandatory or optional? If you could enlighten me on that part, it would be helpful.
I am sorry, I'll have to ask somebody else's help for this. I am not sure whether all the guidelines are mandatory. They were supposed to be mandatory to bring it up to a certain standard, but I don't think they're implemented in many places, and I don't think there is any consequence to not implementing. You know. Anyone else? Prabir, Anand, would you have any idea about the IPH standards?
IPHS standards apply majorly for private institutions. When they come for inspection, there is too much questions about
demand of, yes.
Demand, where is your biomedical waste department? Are you collecting waste properly? But the same thing, the same question doesn't even hold good in the government PHC. They won't be even color-coded dustbin to collect these items and all. So who regulates the governments according to IPHS or not is a big billion-dollar question.
Prabir has written, it depends on the government institution whether they want to implement it or not. And it's not enforceable on the government. So.
All right. So Dr. Shobha has a question. What is the role of the community regarding decisions to their own health, about their own health? Do you envision community ownership as a paradigm shift in the way we try to provide the healthcare service delivery to these communities? May not be the conventional health system strengthening solution, but also community-based solutions.
I think that would be ideal if they could decide how they should have their services and how they could. But in many communities that I have worked with, survival is the first question and the topmost priority. So where to get wages after the, after the mahua season is over and the tobacco leaves, Tendupatta season is over, and after the harvesting of the sugarcane in the next district is over, what do? You wait till the rains come. So survival issues are there, and health as a priority is only seen when it stops them from working at that extent. Certainly there's a role. Maybe there are some situations where immediate survival is not such an issue. And I would think that would be a true community empowerment if they could decide. So.
So Dr. Anand Zakaria says in health professions, professional education, I think we are not discussing rights. How rights are central to medicine and health system. Our responsibility as health professionals to ensure the right to health in our day-to-day work, discussing our constitution in our classroom.
Thank you, Anand. Those are some of the suggestions Anand has, that we make sure if we are teaching in a college, medical college, or where we ensure that the students also study about fundamental rights and know how rights impact health, and also about the Constitution and what it says and what it is, where we are supposed to reach to secure rights. And as physicians and health professionals, I think it's our duty to ensure that people are able to realize their rights, and they will not realize their health rights if some of the others are being very grossly violated.
We have, we can take a few more questions if there are any.
May I ask the question, Dr. Ramani? Hello.
Yes, hi.
Hi, Ramani. Veena here.
Yes, hi.
Good to listen to you. Ramani, would you have something to say about how caste operates in the delivery of healthcare or access to healthcare, or even the kinds of treatment, kind of disease patterns that you may have experienced, because you have such a rich background of working with communities. Would you be able to reflect on something that will feed into my question? That would be really useful.
The most glaring example of caste I found was when I was working in Madhya Pradesh, in northern Madhya Pradesh, where the ANM would refuse to touch the Dalit pregnant mother not even to give tetanus toxoid. She would, of course, forget the abdominal examination. So once I went to one of the villages in Tikamgarh district, and I asked the asked the lady to get me her mat, because I had to examine the women on the porch, and she looked very reluctant because everyone was there, including Dalit women. And so, but I was a doctor, so she didn't say no. But then she gave it to me. I finished examining. There were about 7 or 8 of them, and then I rolled up the mat and thanked her and gave it to her. And she said, "No, just leave it outside. It has to be, Shuddhikaran has to be done before I can touch it." So, yeah, but the doctor, the nurse refusing to touch that, I was really shocked. So, but otherwise, there are assumptions made. It's like, I remember in Bhopal, the people telling me that, when we go to the doctor, he says, "Stand there only and talk to me because you smell. You're so dirty, you stink." And he says, "There is no water in the slums. We stand for hours for the tanker just for drinking water and a little bit for cooking. And we can't afford to bathe every day or once in 2 days. And it's summer." So he says, "I will smell. But why does the doctor have to talk to us like this?" So there's a lot of, this kind of thing. In terms of diseases, I think certainly more malnutrition, certainly more a severe disease, more communicable disease. There is also, of course, increasing non-communicable diseases in them. But in terms of how the doctors and health people talk to them, saying you don't understand, I think the cultural and even the environment in a hospital, which is all, cement and bright shining lights and beds and concrete, is so alien to, say, for a tribal who goes for care, and they're so intimidated by it, and so they're often blank out, and so then they're generally treated as though they don't understand things. They're dim, they're dull. And so I find that facilities which are situated more in the rural area and also are less threatening, smaller, maybe built in the local style, do help people to access services better. I don't know if I've answered some of what you asked, but
yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Anand has written, Prabir has sent a link called reclaimconstitution.in. And Anand has written that in the Reclaim movement, we can take up the issue of health and how it links up to all other rights in a larger public sphere. Discuss it more widely. This was, of course, specific to, medical students and medical personnel. But if you work and look around, you see all the other issues that are affecting, whether it's a laborer who loses his hand in machinery and is not able to get compensation, or everything that you see is. So then the labor laws do matter. Otherwise, it may not directly have anything to do with you. Okay, Prabir has given the link to the study by Sama. Anand, do I want to comment on the case I started with? I discussed that case. It was, it was something that I was involved in those days, standing on the highway and providing not rations that was being given by another NGO, but by providing kits which included ORS packets and Band-Aid and paracetamol and general first aid things to the truckers and people who were going in autos and things. So the fact that, it was suddenly announced with no notice, and these people, all the migrants, were left high and dry. Neither did their owners bother, nor did the state feel any obligation to provide them, shelter where they were staying. Could they have opened shelters and provided food for the length of the lockdown so that the workers need not have gone back? None of that was thought through. And it was a very gross violation of their rights to be made to walk hundreds of kilometers in the summer, and periodically being stopped by police, being beaten, being sprayed by, you know, phenyl or something, as though they were, you know, it was not human. And the kind of, even this poor child died of heat hypopyrexia, standing in the truck for so many days in the hot sun. He just dehydrated and died. So, but I'm sure he doesn't figure in the number of migrants. And anyway, the government has said that they don't have an estimate of how many migrants died. So who is answerable? And why did he die? So these are the questions one needs to ask ourselves. We need to ask ourselves. Could he have been saved, and how? Fortunately, he had a very good friend who, you know, stayed with him till the end and took him home. And it didn't matter to both the friends that they were of different religions.
Yeah. So Dr. Meera, as heat waves are expected, as water is being commoditized, what priority should be given to access to water, safe, uncontaminated, unpoisoned water?
Oh, I think the topmost, Meera, because even in Chhattisgarh, there are some places where the river has been fenced off by Jindal and all for their plants and for the power plants. So several kilometers of the river is fenced off. So neither can people wash their clothes, nor can buffaloes drink the water, because they are patrolled by security. So it's become a kind of, that stretch of the river is privatized now. So these are absolutely dreadful things that are happening all around. And, you know, there is going to be more heat, there is going to be more distress migration, and what awaits them where they migrate is anybody's guess. I think it's you know, the disaster that's looming over us about lack of access to water, lack of access to potable water is still not being recognized. And yeah, there are many places where only bottled water is used by everybody. And I dread to think of the amount of you know, plastic waste that we are generating each time that we use a bottle of water, discard it, and then use another one.
So Saulina asks, are these case studies brought to the attention of the government leaders?
Not always. In terms of as related to Aadhaar, there has been fortunately a lot of there's people who have been really fighting it at every turn, whether it's Aadhaar and rations or Aadhaar and access to work, pensions. So they're being fought, but it's, you know, it's each time something new comes up and then you have to go the whole way again. There's still a lot of protest about this twice a day uploading photographs, geotagged and time-stamped photographs to be uploaded. There was a big dharna of the MNR Rozgar Guarantee workers in New Delhi for several days to protest this. So I think the government has not said no, but they have given more time or something. They said we are looking at to see how we can resolve this problem, but they have not said till then, just let it go.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Madam, can I talk?
Yeah, please.
Just share. 30 years, I am Saulina Arnold, Executive Director, former of Tamil Nadu Voluntary Health Association. 30 years ago, I was in the subcommittee of Planning Commission for Health and Nutrition. We used to share case studies, but I don't know whether these are still around in our political arena. That is why I asked.
Where did you share your case studies, ma'am?
No, I mean, I was in Tamil Nadu, and we used to share as part of the members in the planning commission subcommittee,
Okay.
working committee.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I don't know about what is existing now. That's why I'm retired 10 years ago. So,
Ma'am, there is no planning committee now. The planning
Yeah.
commission is gone. It is now Niti Aayog. And so they consult, I think whoever they feel is, we have not had access. I don't know. I have not been tried to see if anybody can sit in on their consultations and recommendations. But yeah, that is an avenue that can be should also be explored.
okay. Thank you very much, madam.
Yeah, so Dr. Anand is requesting you to talk about little about Reclaim Constitution.
Yeah, Anand, I think you should talk about it. This is a project, this is by a person who started off by a person called Vinay here in Bangalore. And he has started this thing saying we need to reclaim our constitutional values. Now, 75 years down the line, you know, all that we had promised to ourselves and we guaranteed to each of our citizens that we are drifting away from it, whether it is, you know, fundamental rights, right to freedom of association, occupation, right to religion, right to freedom of religion. So that there's been a lot of fundamental rights. And so he has also produced a set of cards which have excerpts from the Constituent Assembly debates. The debates were held between 1946 to 50, very vigorously debated. There were a lot of disagreements. And finally, they came up with what is now in the Indian Constitution. So the debates are also very interesting. And he has abstracted some of the debates and put it there. And you can see how relevant each of them is to what is happening today. And it seeks to spread awareness, basically, and to see how we can all act to get back constitutional values into our lives, into our public life, and into our country. It has, you know, it has some quizzes and puzzles that can be used with students. It has various other things. Anand, you want to add?
So I don't know much about the movement, except that what I've seen on their websites and videos. So there's a Reclaim Constitution movement that's happening in many states across the country, where the Constitution is used as in the classroom to think about how does Constitution play in our lives. So young people work in groups and they discuss over some time and work in pairs or smaller groups, seeing what can they do in trying to live the Constitution out in their lives. So, and then they make videos of things that they have done. So those are things I have seen. Ramani made a presentation in CMC a couple of weeks ago, and I realized that this, in some way, what is being taught in the medical college is seen as something totally unrelated to the question of rights. Somehow the way of thinking about medicine today, the centrality of rights seems to have decreased or become less visible. So I'm just thinking about how this Reclaim Constitution idea can be brought into the area of health. And if we look at young people today, they have people are 2-3 generations from the time the Constitution was set up, and how to think about the Constitution today, and particularly at this time where you know, there are rights are being seen as less important, and if there's a violation, it's more difficult to take it up, to discuss it, to talk about it, write about it. So this movement, I feel at this point, is important, and I think that what Doctors Net and Ramani are trying to do are things that we should try and do wherever we are, so that it becomes part of the larger discussion that's taking place.
Thank you, Anand. Probir was part of a group which did this in Jharkhand. Would you like to share, Probir?
Sorry, some students. One sec, I need to put off the other mic. Students would come for rural sensitization. Some of them were junior doctors as well. And what we took with them was we took them into the newspapers. They took up cases from the newspapers. And then we had a set of experts who asked them, took out some of these discussions from the Constituent Assembly and asked them to relate them to the particular cases which they had brought out from the newspapers. And we just took up-to-date news items. And it happens that the type of students who come for these type of rural sensitizations do take up cases which are to do with environment, to do with tribal, and to do with human rights and intercaste marriages and things. But this was a very simple application of this. There are many other ways this can be done. I think Ramani had seen something done with schools in Bangalore also.
Yeah, that in Bangalore, there's a couple of volunteers there's just some ladies who've decided on their own that the students need to be aware of this. So they have taken permission from the teachers and they're having sessions in the with the classrooms. Civics was a very big thing for us when we were students. I think maybe it's been diluted now. I don't know if anyone has school-going children, whether their children study civics in school. So yes, these women have started going to different government schools, talking about the Constitution and fundamental rights. And yeah. Anand says, in the Medico Friends Circle annual meeting, role plays were used effectively to discuss discrimination and rights. Yes, there are many imaginative ways one can do these. And if some of you are looking for ideas, you can always contact Probir or Anand, me. You can contact Arvindan or put it out on the Dr. Net thing. Somebody will help out. But yes, reading widely, writing about it, speaking about it, discussing and spreading the awareness among, even among, the general public, our neighbors, friends, even if they're not from a medical background, would be things that one could do.
Yeah, I think it's we're almost close to 1.5 hours. If there are no more questions, I think we can wrap the session today. Are there any further questions? All right. Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Ramani, for the insightful presentation. It's nice to see close to 50 people attending today. And what I think is there is actually a mainstream understanding, rather a misunderstanding, that health rights is just about the right to health care. So your diverse case studies elucidated the fact that the right to health is about right to the social determinants of health, and specifically about the equity in health for the people living in the fringes. With the Constitution as the basis, you have helped us view how fundamental rights are linked to the health. Thank you, Dr. Ramani, once again, and to all the participants for the engaging discussion. And thanks to Dr. Anand Zakaria for suggesting us to organize this webinar. Wishing you all a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. See you next time.
Yeah.